November 2nd, 2022. The courtroom in Fort Lauderdale fell silent as Nikolas Cruz stood before Judge Elizabeth Scherer. The man who had murdered 17 people at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School was about to hear his fate. Families of the victims sat waiting for justice. But what the judge sentenced him to that day was just the beginning of a nightmare that many say is far worse than death itself. Nikolas Cruz received 34 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, one each for the total number of victims murdered and wounded.
The court imposes a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole. Again, I am ordering that all 34 counts of the indictment for each sentence is to run consecutive, that is, one after another.
Judge Scherer had no power to change the sentence because the jury could not unanimously agree that Cruz deserved the death penalty. But the families were not satisfied. Ilan Al-Hadef, father of 14-year-old Alyssa, told the court he saw no accountability and no closure because the system valued Cruz's life over the 17 now dead.
Disgusted with our legal system. I'm disgusted with those jurors.
Many victims believed the jury had failed them. They wanted Cruz to face execution.
If not now the death penalty, then when? When?
And here is what I want you to think about as we go through this video. By the end, I am going to show you exactly why Nikolas Cruz's existence in prison might actually be worse than any death sentence. I want you to decide for yourself whether living behind bars for the next 50 or 60 years is mercy or the cruelest punishment imaginable. After his sentencing, Cruz was transferred to the Florida Department of Corrections, where officials decide where an inmate will spend the rest of his life. They look at his crimes, they evaluate his mental state, they determine how dangerous he is, and they figure out where he can be housed without being killed immediately. Because of Cruz's notoriety, officials placed him in protective management, separated from other inmates to keep him from being harmed. But this is not some comfortable safe house. This is isolation. This is being locked away from human contact. This is existing in a concrete box where every sound could signal danger. Think about what Cruz is facing. He took the lives of 14 students and 3 staff members at a school. In the hierarchy of prison, there is nothing lower than someone who harms kids. And every single inmate in the Florida prison system knows exactly who Nikolas Cruz is and what he did. His cell is 9 feet by 12 feet with a bed, metal sink, and metal toilet. That is his entire universe now. The walls are concrete. The door is steel. There is no privacy, no comfort, no escape. In protective management, inmates are separated from the general population. They eat alone. They shower alone. They spend 23 hours a day in their cells. That 1 hour of recreation is not freedom. It is just moving from one cage to another. And even during that hour, Cruz must watch his back because danger can come from anywhere. Even in protective management, Cruz would still come into contact with other inmates who might target him. Just like what happened back in 2017, when an inmate attacked another prisoner named Ryan Mason, who was also in protective custody. So even the so-called safe zone isn't really safe at all. Cruz is not anonymous. He cannot blend in. His case was covered by every news outlet in America. There were documentaries, his interrogation videos, footage of the crime scene, images of the victims. Everyone knows his face. Everyone knows what he did. And in prison where reputation means everything, Cruz has the worst reputation possible. One former Florida inmate recalled officers putting newspaper articles about new inmates convicted of child crimes on bulletin boards where prisoners could see them, and those inmates were targeted. Linda Beigel Schulman, mother of teacher Scott Beigel who Cruz murdered, told him that child killers are highly frowned upon and hated in prison, and she believed he would face severe consequences. This is the reality of prison culture. Inmates who harm children become targets, and those who attack them often gain respect from other prisoners. Every morning Cruz wakes up, he must calculate his survival. Who is walking past his cell? What are the guards saying? Is there tension in the air? These are survival instincts in an environment where he is genuinely at risk every single day. At 5'7" and 130 pounds, Cruz could have difficulty defending himself, though he did attack and briefly pin a Broward jail guard. Cruz is physically small. He is weak, and he has no allies who will protect him out of loyalty or friendship. Cruz could find protection from white supremacist gang members given his fixation on swastikas before his arrest, but most prison friendships come with strings because Cruz has inheritance money. Nothing in prison is free. If someone offers protection, they want something in return. So his choice becomes facing danger alone or owing dangerous people debts he might not be able to pay. Let me explain what extended isolation does to the human mind. Cruz is in protective management, which means extremely limited human contact. Studies have shown that prolonged isolation causes severe psychological damage. People begin to hallucinate. Their sense of time becomes warped. They struggle to think clearly. Anxiety and depression become overwhelming and constant. Some prisoners in long-term isolation describe feeling like they are losing their minds. They talk to themselves. They pace endlessly in their tiny cells. They experience panic attacks. The lack of meaningful human interaction literally changes how the brain functions. And Cruz is living this reality right now. He has been in custody since 2018 and will remain in some form of isolation for years to come. His mind is slowly breaking down. And unlike someone on death row who has an end date, Cruz faces the possibility of 50 or 60 more years of this mental deterioration. But his isolation won't last forever, and when it ends, things could get even worse. The protective management may only last a few months to a year, and eventually Cruz will be eased into the general population. Right now, Cruz has some level of separation from other inmates, but eventually prison officials will decide he needs to interact with the general population. He will be required to work, to eat in common areas, to exist alongside men who want to hurt him. When placed in general population, Cruz will be required to bunk, work, and mingle with other prisoners. He will have a cellmate, someone he did not choose, someone who might know exactly who he is, someone who might decide that hurting Cruz is worth whatever consequences come from it. Work assignments mean being in areas with less supervision. The prison yard means being surrounded by inmates. The cafeteria means sitting among people who despise him. Every moment becomes a test of survival, and this will be his reality for the rest of his life. Cruz cannot escape the memory of what he did. On February 14, 2018, Cruz fatally shot 14 students and 3 staff members and injured 17 others at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. He planned it for months. He walked the halls of his former school with a rifle. He ended lives that had barely begun. Now he sits in a cell with those memories, the faces of his victims, the sounds of that day, the knowledge of what he took from the world. And unlike someone who receives the death penalty and eventually faces execution, Cruz will carry these memories for decades. The families he destroyed continue to suffer. Parents who lost children, siblings who lost brothers and sisters, an entire community traumatized forever. And Cruz knows this. He knows that while he exists in his cell, real people in the real world are still grieving. In November 2018, Cruz attacked a jail officer, briefly pinning him and attempting to grab his taser, and was sentenced to 25 additional years for that attack. This incident revealed something critical. Cruz is not a passive victim of circumstance. He is violent. He is willing to attack even when he knows there will be consequences. But that violence also puts a target on his back. Guards remember when one of their own gets attacked. Other inmates see it as a sign of disrespect toward authority. The attack made Cruz even more hated in a system where he was already despised. Cruz's crimes have been documented in countless news reports, articles, and videos. His case has been analyzed and discussed endlessly, and this means his infamy never fades. New people learn about him constantly. This permanent visibility means he will never be forgotten. His name will forever be associated with one of the deadliest school shootings in American history. Guards who work with him know what he did. Inmates who encounter him know what he did. There is no anonymity. And unlike criminals from decades past whose crimes eventually fade from public memory, Cruz's crimes remain visible and accessible. Anyone can search his name and find extensive coverage. This means the hatred toward him is constantly renewed. Cruz was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. This means there is absolutely no chance he will ever be released. It does not matter if he claims to feel remorse. It does not matter if he participates in programs. It does not matter if he becomes a model prisoner. Nothing will ever change his sentence. Most prisoners hold onto some form of hope. Maybe they will get parole. Maybe their sentence will be reduced. Cruz has none of these possibilities. His future is completely certain and completely bleak. He will die in prison. Think about waking up every morning with absolute certainty that nothing will ever improve. That this is your existence until you draw your last breath. That crushing absence of hope is its own form of torture. It removes any reason to look forward, any goal to work toward, any light at the end of any tunnel. Does Cruz feel genuine remorse for what he did? In jail behavior reports, Cruz was described as cooperative with logical and coherent thinking, but was also observed smiling and giggling while speaking with his attorneys days after the shooting. That image of him laughing so soon after murdering 17 people enraged the public and the victims' families. Some people believe Cruz is incapable of true remorse. Others argue that his mental health issues and brain damage from fetal alcohol exposure mean he processes emotions differently. But regardless of what he feels internally, it does not change his reality. He will remain in prison. He will continue to face the consequences, and nothing he says or feels will bring back the people he murdered. Let me present you with two scenarios. On death row, Cruz would have his own cell, meals delivered to him, clean clothes brought to him, no requirement to work. Yes, he would face execution eventually, but until that day, he would live in relative isolation with certain basic comforts. But his existence in a maximum security prison as a life sentence inmate looms as dreadful and possibly violent, requiring him to eventually live among the prison population, work a prison job, and interact with other inmates who may want to harm him. He faces decades of constant fear, decades of threat, decades of being the most hated person in any room he enters. David Al-Hadef, uncle of victim Alyssa, told Cruz that he deserves the opportunity to rot away and to absorb the look of terror on his face, knowing that justice will prevail at some point, causing him great anguish minute by minute, day by day. This is the reality of life in prison for Cruz. Not a quick death, not an escape, but prolonged suffering stretched across an entire lifetime. 14 students and 3 adults died that day. These were real people with families and friends and futures. Their families still grieve every single day. The trauma of that day will never fully heal. And Cruz's existence in prison does not ease that pain, but it does provide a form of ongoing justice. Every day he suffers is another day he faces consequences for what he took from these families. After sentencing, Judge Scherer told the victims and families she wished she could take their pain away or carry it for them for just 5 minutes so they could breathe. But no one can take that pain away. It is permanent, just like Cruz's sentence is permanent. Cruz is currently 26 years old. Based on average life expectancy, he could spend another 50 or even 60 years in prison. That is 5 or 6 decades of the existence I have just described. 5 or 6 decades in cells measuring 9 by 12 feet. 5 or 6 decades of isolation and fear and constant threat. Former inmates and corrections experts say Cruz is constantly going to live in fear, facing a hellish life in prison where other inmates want to hurt him and guards may turn a blind eye. This is the documented reality of what happens to high-profile child killers in the prison system. They are targeted. They are isolated. They suffer. Linda Schulman said Cruz has consequences ahead of him and will spend his miserable life looking over his shoulder, worried and fearful every single minute. I have shown you the reality of Nikolas Cruz's life behind bars. The constant fear, the isolation, the psychological damage, the physical danger, the complete absence of hope. The knowledge that this will be his existence for the next 50 years or more. Do you believe life in prison is actually harsher than the death penalty? Do you think Cruz is getting what he deserves, or should he have been executed? Has this video changed your perspective on life sentences versus capital punishment? Does prolonged suffering serve justice better than a quick death? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Tell me if you think Cruz's prison existence is truly worse than death, or if you believe the death penalty would have been more appropriate. This is a question that divides people. There is no easy answer, but the victims' families deserve to have their voices heard and their perspectives considered. One thing is absolutely certain: Nikolas Cruz will never know freedom again. He will never walk outside without restraints. He will never have a normal conversation. He will never escape what he did on February 14, 2018. Every single day for the rest of his life will be a reminder that he destroyed 17 lives and traumatized an entire community. This is life in prison for one of America's most notorious school shooters. This is what worse than death actually looks like.